Choose font wisely. In this video, we are going to differentiate between serif and sans serif font and why print media prefers serif and digital media prefer sans serif. Why print media will always prefer serif font and digital media usually will prefer sans serif. Choose font wisely. In fact, font is a vital thing in today's computer age when everything you write is using computers. So, font in writing can be compared to voice modulation in speech. Voice modulation in speech gives it the distinct flavor, the intended emphasis. And similarly, choosing the proper font in writing will also give your writing the distinct flavor. So we have to choose font wisely, but before that, we will know what is serif and what is sans serif and why print media prefer serif and digital media prefer sans serif. So choose font wisely. On clicking font in MS Word, you will get a lot of font. Some of them we have shown on the left. These are the different font. Font was previously called typeface. Typeface in the age of typewriters. Of course, one typewriter did not have so many fonts, but different typewriters had distinct fonts. They were called typefaces. So typeface is font. And on the right, we have font, the same word font, written 6 times in different fonts. The first 3, which you find in red color, are sans serif, and the last 3, which you find in blue color, are serif. The top 3 are sans serif. They are different fonts, but all are sans serif category. And the last 3, they are also different fonts, but serif category. If you still don't understand, we will look into it deeper and see what is serif and what is sans serif. Now let us see what are serif and sans serif fonts. Serif fonts. A serif font has small strokes or feet at the end of the letter, and sans serif means without serif, clean and no extra strokes. You can see the first letter A is sans serif, no extra flourishes, strokes or feet. And the second is serif. And if still you don't understand, see the third picture, the feet or strokes are red in color. Right? The first is sans serif, without serif, sans, without, sans serif. The second is serif, with the extra strokes or feet or flourishes. And in the last, the third picture, you can see that the feet or strokes are red in color. So you can appreciate what is serif. What is serif? That which has extra strokes or feet. We have shown it in red color. In the third picture, you can see at the bottom the red color. That is the extra strokes. That is the extra feet that constitutes serif font. So of course you won't be finding a red and black combination like this, but we have made it red to show what we mean by feet or strokes. So a font having feet or strokes, just like the red color feet or strokes shown in the third picture, they are called serif fonts, and those without these strokes would be called sans serif. So the picture number 1 is sans serif, picture number 2 is serif, and the feet or strokes are particularly pointed out the third picture by making them red in color. So serif font has small strokes or feet at the ends of the letter, and sans serif, without serif, they are clean with no extra strokes and no extra flourishes. Now, why serif fonts are used in books and newspapers, long text, print media. Books and newspapers, what we are seeing actually, books and newspapers, print media, long texts. Serif guides the eye along the line. Serif guides the eye along the line. You can see the red color. The committee has written to all members. See the red color, right? Can you see the red color? So it will guide you. It will guide the eye along the line. So when the lines are very closely printed, you have to keep focus while reading on the same line. Don't mix up the lines. So the strain is there. So serif provides a sort of guide that decreases the strain. The eye has to go along the same line without mixing up the lines. So it's a strain. So the strain is relieved by using serif fonts so that the feet at the bottom of the letters provide an automatic guide so that you can read in a straight line. So serifs guide the eye along the line. So it is easier to read long passages of printed text, particularly if they are very closely printed. If the space between lines happens to be very small, very little space between lines, in order to save paper, in order to save space. If the lines are printed very close to each other, if the space between two lines may not be enough, in that case, it is easier. The serif fonts will make it easier to read long passages of printed text because the eye will be guided along the extra feet or flourishes at the bottom of serif fonts. Traditional, familiar, look for serious content. So, 3 points: books and newspaper, long texts. Long texts. So, in long texts, serifs guide the eye along the line. That means it relieves your stress. It is easier to read long passages of printed text, particularly if the line spacing is very little and it looks traditional and familiar, and probably it will signify serious content. So long text, printed material, serious content, use serif font. Long text and serious content, particularly lines printed close together, and print media, books and newspapers, use serif font. Now we come to sans serif font. Why sans serif font will look cleaner? Simple shape and more spacing. Modern, neat appearance. Better for short texts, signage and screens. Right? Why sans serif is better in electronic media, in digital media? Simple shapes, more spacing, modern, neat appearance. It is better for short texts, signage and screens, digital media, because more lines if you can accommodate, then less amount of scrolling is needed. Supposing on your computer screen, if you can accommodate more text, then you will have less amount of scrolling up and down. So better for short texts, signage and screens, computer screens, digital media, electronic media, looking modern, neat, simple shapes. Now, we have got two lines, serif versus sans serif, both font size 36. Both, the font size is 36, serif versus sans serif. See that serif occupies more space and sans serif occupies less space. The same thing we are writing. Font size 36 in both cases. So serif, that is the second line, committee has written to all members. The second line takes up more space, and sans serif, the first line, takes up less space. So with less space, you can put more material. Not only you are saving space, but the more the amount of material, the less the scrolling up and down. So it is easier for electronic media, digital media. It is easier to read, more spacing, neat, and it occupies less space, giving you better spacing between words, between letters. So more spacing, neater, easier to read, and space saving. So in digital media, texts and signage and screens, particularly computer screens, we prefer sans serif. So let us compare print media versus screen media. Print media versus screen media feature detail. Serif fonts we prefer in print media with strokes, and sans serif we prefer in screen digital media, no strokes. Readability. Serif fonts in print media best for long text, and sans serif in the screen, that is digital media, best for quick reading. Usage. Long text, use serif, books and newspapers, and sans serif, used in electronic media, websites, apps, and slides. The feel, if you use serif fonts, it will be traditional and formal feel, while if you use sans serif, it will be modern and clean feel. So the features, we have got detail with strokes, that is serif fonts with strokes, best for long text, used in books and newspapers, looking traditional and formal. Sans serif without strokes, best for quick scanning. They are using in websites, apps, slides, on-screen signage because it looks modern and clean. That is the preference of serif and sans serif fonts in print versus screen, or in print media versus electronic and digital media. So summary, serif fonts great for printed text, long reading. Sans serif font great for digital quick reading or quick scanning. Right? Serif media, it is great for printed long reading, long text, while sans serif, it is great for digital media, quick reading or quick scanning. Choose based on medium and tone. Is it serious reading or information for quick scanning, or signage which you just have to read at a glance? So for signage, for website, you prefer sans serif, while for novels, long stories, newspapers, you prefer serif. So once again, we have got the final word on it. Readability in long texts or print media. Serif fonts like Times New Roman, Georgia, have tiny lines or strokes at the ends of letters. They guide the eye from one letter to the next, especially in dense blocks of text with very little line spacing, helping you to maintain a reading flow. You can read along the same line without mixing up the lines. If the line spacing is very less, if it is dense text, then it is easier to read along the same line without strain, that is the serifs, the strokes, and particularly useful in printed books and newspapers or long form reading or long text. Tradition and familiarity. Books and newspapers have serif fonts for centuries, since the days of early printing. Readers are used to this style, so it feels more book-like or serious. Serif fonts are often seen as formal, trustworthy, professional. Paper print versus screen. Serif fonts work well on high-resolution print like paper. On low-resolution screens, especially older ones, serifs can blur, which is why sans serif fonts, that's why we are using the sans serif fonts like Arial or Helvetica are more common in digital contexts like websites, apps, and slides. Because of low resolution, serifs can get blurred in dense text. Then we prefer sans serif like Arial or Helvetica. But in paper print, a long text, dense text, it is easier to read. It is easier to keep your eye and reading flow along the same line without mixing up the lines. So then we prefer serif font. Why serif fonts are not preferred in digital media and why sans serif feels neater? Sans serif fonts feel neater. Sans serif fonts feel neater. Sans serif fonts are cleaner and simpler without extra strokes. They look more modern and are better for short bursts of text, headlines, or screen based content, that is, a digital and electronic media. They create more visual space, which is ideal for young readers, low vision users, or digital displays. For digital displays, electronic displays, we always prefer sans serif because they create more visual space and they also look more modern and are suited for short bursts of text, headlines, or screen based content. So, thank you. That was the difference between serif fonts and sans serif fonts. The difference: choose fonts wisely, they affect how we read, and also how the text will impact us. What is the impact of your reading? That will depend on the font, not only on the words but also on the font. So choose font wisely. And once again, we may remind that, see the top line, committee has written to all members, the top line occupying much less space. Although both are in font 36, but the top line is occupying much less space because it is sans serif. And the second line is occupying more space because it is serif. So if you want to condense serif to a smaller space, it will get blurred. So that was the difference between serif and sans serif fonts. We will come back again with more interesting information. Till then, goodbye.